So the sugar mill is on fire. Oh no. But before we get into that, I want to first start off. First of all, I want to call this episode Total Chaos. Like, that is what I am naming this episode, Total Chaos, because every character in this episode, just about, every main character was experiencing some form of chaos, and it all has much to do. It actually has a lot to do with the things we've been seeing unfold between Nova's book, as well as Charlie attempting to run for councilwoman and fight this highway being built in St. Joe's. So I want to first start with Ralph Angel. In this episode, we see that Ralph Angel's re-entry program / land / farm / home is being basically invaded by the police because they claim they found and also received an anonymous tip and found drugs, I guess, in meth, as they put it, in the vehicles of some of his workers. And one of those workers is someone he's very close to, one of the individuals he seemed to have become more closer to, as well as I feel like he sees himself in this young man. What I find interesting about this whole thing is the cop was telling him to check his cameras. Now, I thought to myself, if Ralph Angel was being set up, because he felt they did receive an anonymous tip, and then it makes you wonder who made that phone call. So it sounds like they're basically being set up. But then for the officer to tell him to check his camera, I thought to myself, okay, well, we know it's not the cops. We know it's not them for a change that's setting them up. They received the tip. They're just following the tip. And yeah, they were roughhousing those young men. So that's typical cop behavior, in my opinion. Typical bigot, arrogant, misogynistic, cop behavior. But anyway, the fact that they were roughing them up, that's completely on the cops. But the arrest itself, I don't feel like it's the cops setting them up. Again, they said they received an anonymous tip, and on top of it, they basically encouraged him to check the camera. So that's what made me think, okay, they didn't plant the drugs, because I don't believe they would have encouraged him to check the cameras. But I kept saying to myself, okay, he has cameras. Unlike everybody else in this episode, he has cameras on his property, so he needs to check those cameras. But he was worried about the cameras being tampered with, as he said later on. He was worried about those cameras being tampered with. But what I find interesting about this is that when this was happening, I was just wondering, like, okay, someone planned drugs. It's not far-fetched. Someone threw a brick through Charlie's window. It seems like whoever is connected to Charlie is now feeling the wrath of what Charlie is trying to do. But it's just, I don't know. I was a little skeptical because of the young man who Ralph Angel is closer to. Just something about him shouting that he didn't do it. It was just something, it was off for me. But I guess we'll know in upcoming episodes whether or not it's true or not. I mean, there was a scene where Ralph Angel is sitting with his girlfriend that he's now seeing, and that young man that's in the re-entry program that was arrested, they're sitting at the table together. And mind you, Ralph Angel's current girlfriend is also an attorney, so she's now going to be representing the whole case. And they're sitting at the table, and she's trying to get him to talk. She's trying to get him to eat. And I can understand he's probably in a catatonic stage, a little mild catatonic stage, due to the roughhousing of the police. You got to think about it. If you're someone that is completely innocent, and you go through a traumatic experience such as an arrest, and we're not even including the background of all of that, seeing the fact that once you get to the police station, you're being strip searched, you go through all this fingerprinting, pictures taken, all these things happen, and that can be traumatic. Of course, it is traumatic, because especially if you're innocent and you was not expecting that to happen, not to mention the traumatization of even being set up. So I can understand why he would be in a catatonic stage, but at the same time, I'm just waiting for him to go, listen, I never did this, this never happened. When you were gone, those times we were doing our job. We were not out here, selling drugs on your property. That's what I was waiting to hear. So that's why I had to really, throughout the episode, kind of sit back and just be quiet and watch, because I'm like, okay, I would think if he was really all that innocent, he would have came out at that table and explained all that. Unless it was already explained, you know, but then again, they did say he had been quiet the entire time and he hadn't even eaten. So, you know, and then I think too, like if he was guilty, you know, would he have not eaten? I don't know. So I guess, like I said, we will see that unfold later on. But there's something I want to get back to this scenario in a minute. So moving forward, we have Nova. Nova is still on her book tour. She out here doing the dang old thing with her book tour. Still feeling lonely though, because of the fact that she knows she has betrayed her family. But all she can do is pretty much ride the wave, because it's pretty much all she has going for herself at the moment. While we see while on this book tour, she ends up running into Calvin. Calvin is played by the actor Greg Vaughn, who I personally am familiar with from General Hospital. His brief time on General Hospital, it wasn't all that brief, but during his time on General Hospital, where he plays the character Lucky, that is where I'm familiar with Greg Vaughn. But I also understand he is also on another soap opera. I'm not sure if he's been on more than two, but I am aware he has been on two. And now he has returned, and I'm very excited to see that, because again, I am someone who is very familiar with Greg Vaughn from General Hospital, and I loved him playing Lucky on there. And so yeah, I enjoy seeing his screen presence. But anyway, moving forward, what we now learn is that Calvin, the character Calvin, has divorced his wife, which is a plus for Nova, because we know, I believe that was the first season, there was like this relationship between Calvin and Nova that should not have been, because Calvin was still married. And I believe that is probably the reason why Nova held back so much as far as her emotions go. Like, we clearly can see Calvin was not holding back much, but it was, you know, I feel like Nova felt conflicted with that because he was married. And also too, I'm wondering if the race thing is playing a role in this whole scenario as well, being that, you know, Nova, she tends to stand a lot on the black issues and injustices here in this country, and then for her to be seen out in public and, you know, in a relationship with a Caucasian male can conflict with her image. Unfortunately, it really can conflict with her image. And I think that's something that, you know, she pretty much was weighing towards the end of this episode, where we see the final scene between the two. But anyway, they basically end up catching up. Before I get too far ahead, they catch up with one another. You can definitely see the sparks are still there, but you can also see the maturity between the two characters. They have come along very, very far since the first season. And it seems like they're now two whole and healthy individuals coming back together. I mean, besides the drama in Nova life, drama, Nova is drama. So besides all that drama in Nova's life, they seem to be a lot better off than what they were initially. They seemed a little too codependent on one another in the first season. This season, they seem like two healthy, whole individuals completely on their own, coming together, and now can possibly figure out if they have a genuine connection, which is pretty much what they agreed to do in the very last scene that they shared together on this episode. So I am very excited to see what happens moving forward. Now, me personally, I kind of felt like Nova needed to be alone for a little while, but you know, this is TV, so I get that they're pushing it whatever direction they're pushing it in, but I kind of felt like she needed to be alone for a little while, seeing as she just broke up with the professor technically, you know. So I feel like Nova never really gets that time to just be alone and learn to be dependent on herself, learn to heal from whatever she's been through and reflect on that and make better choices. So I'm definitely curious to see how this is going to turn out, and if Nova this time would be the one to destroy things, or will they flourish. So anyway, moving on, we have Violet. Now, Hollywood, we learn, is out of town taking care of his mother. But to be honest, a part of me is wondering if Hollywood, you know, decided to leave to give Violet some space. And I think Violet pretty much confirms that with the conversation she has with Charlie at one point in this episode, is that she basically let Hollywood know that she needed space because of the way she was feeling after Jimmy Dale had came to town. She did not want, unfortunately, Hollywood touching her, and that her doctor pretty much diagnosed her with post-traumatic stress disorder. So I believe that is the reason why Hollywood decided to up and leave. Now, what ends up happening is Violet's diner gets vandalized, like just completely trashed on the inside. And there was a point where she was being urged to call Hollywood, but she actually throughout this entire episode resisted calling Hollywood. And I guess because a part of her knew that if he came back, he'd want to embrace her. He'd want to be there for her physically, and that's just something that she knows she's not ready for. So she figured he's better off where he's at. And then she even mentions that they agreed that she would call him back when she was finally over, or have finally worked through those feelings that she has after the whole Jimmy Dale incident. So I believe since she's not ready yet to have Hollywood in her physical presence, that is the reason why she would not call him throughout this entire episode. But the diner ends up getting vandalized, and Charlie is like on the hunt. You know, Charlie learns the diner has been vandalized. I believe she learned about Ralph Angel's situation as well, but I can't remember 100% sure on that. Feel free to let me know in the comment section or in the chat. Anyway, Charlie ends up figuring out that well, actually it was Charlie and Ralph Angel who sat down with the I guess a nearby, I can't remember if he was a dentist office or a pharmacy, but with a nearby doctor in the area who had cameras pointed towards Violet's diner, because Violet does not have cameras, although I'm sure she's going to get some now. And his cameras they used to figure out who was responsible for trashing Violet's diner. So come to find out, there was a man that Charlie has seen a couple of episodes prior, I believe, who was in the room with Jacob Bourgeois at the time that Charlie went to speak with him. This very same man was in the pictures or the surveillance camera. He was on the surveillance camera. Then they saw the face of the young man actually, who vandalized Violet's diner. Well, come to find out, after Ralph Angel put it together, it was a young man by the name of I am not going to probably be able to say this name right. Joaquin, okay, with a K, not a Q. I'm trying to pronounce it as a Q. Joaquin is actually the son and brother of the two individuals who were deported a couple of episodes back, or last episode, I think it was a couple of episodes back, who was deported in that raid of the makeshift clinic that Romero and Charlie set up. So basically what happened is the man who was in the picture, or the male that was in the surveillance pictures, who also knows Jacob Landry, Jacob Bourgeois, whichever his last name he using these days, he basically forced Joaquin to vandalize Violet's home and property by threatening to have his mother deported, who is pretty much all Joaquin has left of family, since his father and his older brother has been deported. So now we learn the motive. We learn who vandalized Violet's diner. Then we get a motive. But now it's time to figure out who is the man that set all of this up. So Charlie pretty much learns that the man who set all of this up is a man that works for some sort of energy company, and she learns this from the pastor of the church. I had to remember who that man was. I'm like, who is this man sitting here? They said the father had been deported. Who is this man sitting here with Joaquin and his mom? But then I put two and two together, like, oh yeah, that's the pastor that we've seen from the previous episode that Charlie just met. So we can clearly see too that Charlie and the pastor are getting along well and are working together really well. That's good to see as well. But anyway, before I jump too far ahead and focus on Charlie, I want to also say that Charlie had Joaquin go and apologize to Violet. Violet basically set it up where Joaquin would work 3 afternoons a week at her diner, making up for what he had done, which I think is so awesome, because they decided not to call the police on Joaquin. They understood that here is a young boy, pretty much, you know, he didn't mean to do it, he was forced to do it. On top of it, he doesn't have his family. You know, his father and his older brother just got deported. He's pretty much all his mom has. So they really were being sympathetic to the situation, not to mention understanding the fact that he really was, at the end of the day, forced to do it. So how much can you really blame him? So I really liked how Charlie and Violet handled it. I really like the old school way that Violet handled it, with making him work 3 afternoons out the week. But the amazing thing is that it looks like you have Joaquin, Romero, the pastor, and members of the church, possibly, or just members of St. Joe, were all in Violet's diner revamping Violet's diner, cleaning up, and they just made it look so nice. It looked very better than what it did when it got vandalized, and that really filled Violet's heart with warmth and happiness, which was very good to see, considering Violet has been through so much this season. So it was really good to see that. So that's putting the end to Violet's story for this episode. So focusing now on Charlie, which is a little bit more complex to explain. So Charlie ends up meeting with another councilwoman. Charlie basically wants to work with the councilwoman. However, Charlie's reputation continues to precede her, and the councilwoman basically lets her know that she does not trust Charlie, and that she's read Nova's book about Charlie, you know, the parts where Charlie is mentioned in there, and she does not trust Charlie. So Charlie's like, really? Here we go again with the book. But the woman basically tells her, listen, if you want me to work with you in shutting down this highway, then you need to give me find out the reason why the highway was taken out of the other parish in the first place. So now this is sending Charlie on a mission, but what I believe is the vandalism of Violet's diner is what led Charlie to that reason, because she ends up meeting with Jacob after learning that the male who set the whole thing in motion was actually some sort of gas worker. You know, they do fracking. So after she put that together with the help of the pastor, she met up with Jacob Boudreaux. Listen, Jacob Boudreaux is so gullible for Charlie, and she knows it. So she's like standing there at her home seducing Jacob in, you know, a very mild manner way. And basically she gets out of him, because he's very naive for Charlie, she gets out of him the fact that yes, indeed, there is an energy company coming into town and they are looking to do some fracking. That is the purpose of the highway, so they can be able to move equipment through St. Joe's. And when Charlie begins to, you know, say like, listen, what about the people here, you know, this is wrong, Jacob basically says, listen, Charlie, this is not black or white. This is about basically money, and telling her that the Landrys have already picked a side. The energy company been one. The Landrys picked a side, or the natural gas company rather has been one, and that she needs to pick a side too. So that was very jacked up to hear. Like, you know, him and his family, they're about nothing more than money. And if there ever was a chance, which there probably was never a chance, but if there ever was a chance between Charlie and Jacob, he definitely has killed it. But you know, Charlie is with Romero and she's happy. Hey, she's living her best life. Anyway, after getting this information and Jacob realizing that he has just told more than he should have to Charlie, he basically threatens Charlie like, listen, you know I'm not just going to let you make a fool out of me. And Charlie's like, listen, you already did. So this brings us to, there was a protest that occurred where people of St. Joe's pretty much all came out and wore these shirts of solidarity that supposed to represent the flag and the words of the flag, or the state words. Listen, I completely forgot, but you all probably remember if you've seen the episode. So basically they have this big protest that's showing solidarity and standing up against this natural energy or natural gas company, and that was on the news. So we know a lot of individuals who are for the company got a hold of this information. So towards the end, Charlie and her son Micah are celebrating this accomplishment, this protest, when suddenly the phones in the house start ringing off the hook. What I thought was hilarious was when Charlie said, the house, the landline, that my landline never, you know, no one ever calls the landline. And I thought that was funny because that's how I feel about my landline. Like, nobody don't call my landline. But that's how you know there was something wrong, because all her phones just started ringing at once. And immediately she picked up her cell phone. It was Prosper on the other end, basically telling her that her sugar mill was on fire. Can we just have a moment of silence for that sugar mill? I mean, we don't know how much damage is done or has been done, and I guess we are going to learn in the next episode, but someone has really messed up now. And because we know Jacob sent that little threat to Charlie in that scene that they were in together, it almost makes us want to go, it had to have been Jacob. But at the same time, you know, again, what their protest was on the news. That means a lot of individuals saw it, and given that there are a lot of individuals that are backing up the highway, backing up that natural gas company, I think it's safe to say we can't exactly put it on Jacob just yet. So these upcoming episodes, I feel like is definitely going to reveal some truths, and it's going to blow us out the water. Charlie is really up against some giants. She is going to need her family. She's going to need all the St. Joes. She's going to need Romero. She's going to need all the help that she can get. What is truly amazing is the fact that she's this woman that is standing up against all of this, and I'm just like blown away by it. But at the same time, I know it's really putting her and her family in danger. And what I wanted to connect back to Ralph Angel's story is the fact that Joaquin admitted to throwing the brick through Charlie's campaign site window. He admitted to vandalizing Vi's diner. However, Joaquin never admitted to planting any drugs in anyone's car. So it's still a mystery as to whether or not those drugs that was planted in the vehicles of the workers at the reentry program of Ralph Angel's reentry program, whether or not they were set up, which is why I said I'm very skeptical about that. So it's going to be very interesting to see what these next upcoming episodes bring. I mean, Ralph Angel stands the risk of losing his reentry program and the grant money from it because of this situation. So that's it. Let me know how you all feel about this episode in the comment section. I'll see you all next episode. Peace.